As the prophet of esports, I rely on trustworthy and meaningful data every day. Data from our research partner YouGov offers the most complete view of esports fans and gamers in the world, providing context to who they are, what they think, the brands they buy, and things they do. YouGov's connected insights and research services inform strategy at every level. If you're a team, a brand, agency, or rights holder, you should be talking with YouGov. Their partners measure and maximize ROI and are telling compelling stories with data. Visit yougov.com/gaming-esports to learn more.
You guys will appreciate, or Jimmy will appreciate this, especially having had some past in the music industry. And the headline here was eye-catching to me. It says, G2 Esports announces a record label launch with metal track ROA. The Power Metal track is the first of many songs from G2, first of many in quotes, a quote from the company. It says G2 Esports has expanded into the music industry with the launch of its own record label and has marked the occasion by releasing its first track titled Our Way. It features several recognizable names in the metal genre. I'm not familiar with the metal genre, so I don't know these names, but you guys might. Jason Richardson, Luke Holland, Nura Luhimo, and features YouTuber Taylor Davis as well as Tina Guo. So G2 Esports launching a music label. Jimmy, I want to know, in your mind, is this completely genius, or is this esports teams just like really confused about who they are? No clue. Well, literally grasping at dollars wherever they can get them. I'm curious if you think this is truly visionary or it's a mistake in your mind.
It's definitely not visionary. I think it might be a little. I think it might be a little both. Who's to say the genius and crazy don't overlap, and oftentimes they do. What I'll say is, from a music perspective, traditionally in 90s, pre-2000s, artists were signed to a series of deals depending on what the label believed them to be capable of. And they would offer them advances, which would be recouped against the album sales and recouped again, and after the marketing budget spend. But in essence, it was a very cut and dry, we think you're going to be big, or maybe you're a mid-tier or a big artist, and here's a certain check that correlates with your value and with what we think this album's going to do. And then that all changed with Madonna and Jay-Z and these 360 deals, where labels were realizing that they were investing hundreds of millions into these names, and then only for those brands to go create a clothing line or an alcohol line and do these things without them that the label didn't get a piece of. So they started renegotiating for 360 deals, which were massive $500 million plus deals depending on the artist. And that gave the label a cut of everything. No matter what that artist did, the label felt that they built that brand through the music, and that entitled them to small percentages here and there of everything else. So what I see with G2 is kind of flipping that and also acknowledging that sooner than most, which is, hey, we're making these, again, I don't know really the nature of this. I haven't heard the song, first of all, so I don't know if it's any good. Not a metal fan, so I can't speak to the talent on that track. But what I can say is, if I am any type of business where I have talent on my roster, if that talent becomes famous because of my effort promoting them, plugging them with sponsors, giving them a platform to grow, especially in gaming where they're probably smaller and younger than most, and then that talent decides they're going to spin off and do music or anything else that really floats their boat, I'm probably going to want a piece of that, or otherwise feel like I spent a lot of money building this person up into something that I later don't have a claim towards. I'd also say that, especially in esports, where the lifespan of the competitive side of things is much shorter, it's probably a brilliant thing to, we're seeing a lot of gamers turn streamers just because, it's a little bit of a more accommodating schedule or whatnot. So I think it shows good foresight from the orgs that hey, they're looking for the long term, I think, in terms of what they can do with this talent, and also they're looking to make sure that if they spend all that money developing somebody, that they're not left high and dry after all of that.
I mean, Jimmy, you may be giving them too much credit. Like, I don't know if the article made it seem like they had thought through sort of this music label as extensively as you already have. Yeah. I guess for Lindsay, let me direct this at you. There was this quote in the article specifically where it says, on the organization's decision to kick off its record label with a metal song, G2 Esports founder Carlos Rodriguez said, "Epic power metal is my favorite genre. I don't care about its marketability. It's coming from the heart like everything else we do." And so the business person in me looks at that and goes, this is a little scary. Like, I appreciate that it's coming from the heart, but like, it sounds like we've done no research. We don't know if metal is the right thing for our audience, right? Like we haven't looked at any YouGov data, which G2, if you're listening, you should go talk to YouGov, yougov.com/gaming-esports, and figure out if there's overlap between your audience and metal. But Lindsay, does this scare you, or do you love that sort of this seems more like a gut business decision here?
I totally think that if people, I mean, we talk about this silly authenticity word all the time, but I suppose I would rather see people who can really back up what they're doing with passion, because I do think that then they'll be able to find, I would say, I don't know if it's called a niche or growing communities, but I will say I've been learning a lot more about metal in particular, actually, and as it relates to gaming. And there is a pretty massive overlap. There's a super popular streamer who's also the lead vocalist for the band Trivium, which is a big one. I also was a huge Falling in Reverse fan in middle school. So shout out. I definitely was part of that. And there is, when we talk about things that are done from the heart, like he is talking about, there's a certain appreciation in these more niche communities for plays like that than there would be if they had just come out and like made a maybe a pop song or something that could have been more catchy or more popular. I don't think that this is a mega billion-dollar thing to start, but I do think that these kinds of passion projects can turn some type of profit and help you grow a community that's built on the same things that you value. I don't know if that makes sense. Like, this isn't a knock it out of the park capitalist deal for sure, but I don't think it's a net loss either. It's somewhere in the middle.
Okay, but put your like investor hat on, because all these esports teams are spending someone else's money, right? Like, if your CEO that you've invested a lot of money in their company is spending time producing metal songs when really what you've paid him to do and what you've invested in him to do is to build an esports org. Does this, like, again, if I'm the investor, I feel like I lose sleep on things like this. I feel like this would keep me up at night.
I'd have to see more of the numbers, but to Jimmy's point, it's the same thing as a singer saying that they're going to start a clothing line. You'll just never know what's going to be that thing that hits, or what's going to be that community that kind of provides you the tipping point in growing what you're doing. There is a big crossover between metal and gaming. There is an audience there that can be profitable. Is this the way of doing it? I don't know, but this is at least a shot, and I hope it didn't cost too much, and I don't think it'll lose that much either. But again, without knowing the numbers, I can't confidently say I would feel comfortable with this. So hopefully whatever story they've given to their investors is a convincing one.
Let me just read Christopher's comment here. He says, grabbing friends from the community to compete in online tournaments in esports has always made me think this is probably what it feels like to create a garage band. All the best Nordic rock I discovered gaming too. Christopher, it's a good point. It also doesn't mean that this was a good business decision. But you're right. I mean, there's definitely overlap, I guess, in that feeling. Like, playing competitive games with friends must be what it's like to be in a garage band. But I don't know if esports orgs should be directly in the music business. Jeff, I don't know if you had any thoughts on this before we move on. Yeah.
Stupid microphone. No, I agree with the profit entirely. I mean, Lindsay, you may be right that there may be overlap between the grunge scene and esports, and that may be true, but it's really scary as a CEO just saying, well, we didn't even look into that. I'm just doing this because I want to, and screw everyone else. It's like, that is, even if you're right, that is not a process that's going to work. And I guarantee you that this will fail. And I would guess that this whole org will fail if that's the way they're running their business, right? It's just not just not good business. You can do that if you're like if you're Dr. Disrespect, you could do that because you're yourself and people might appreciate that authenticity. But when you're running a business and that business is to run an esports team, it's like, why don't we just open a Chick-fil-A? Like, that'll be fun. I've always wanted to own a Chick-fil-A. Like, it's an esports Chick-fil-A. Like, that's not really how
this is why
works.
Jeff loves Bobby Kotick, though, because Bobby's like, stock price up, everything good, and Jeff's like, yeah.
That's, as an investor, I mean, that's the way we want people to run their business. I love
Jeff's analogy here. Like, why not? Why doesn't G2 open a Chick-fil-A? Like, if Carlos decides, G2 Ocelot, Carlos Rodriguez, the CEO, decides he really loves, his hearts and chicken sandwiches, would you be okay as the investor? I mean, I get music is closer to esports than chicken sandwiches, but not by much in my mind.
I mean, you're talking about the difference between creative pursuits and general business pursuits, though, too.
Yeah.
Right, but it's not a creative pursuit once you take on millions of investor dollars.
Yeah, you're not like I'm not saying you're wrong, Jeff, at all. In fact, I largely agree with you. It's just I think that as Jimmy said, sometimes genius and crazy overlap, and sometimes it can work. So.
Christopher here says, I think it shows the personality of the individual organization and artistic side. So maybe, I mean, Christopher, it's true. And like I said, I said at the beginning when I brought up that quote, I appreciate that he's doing this from the heart and that he believes in it and the whole bit. But that would be fine if you hadn't raised outside money, if you didn't have investors who were expecting you to do one thing. I think you make a lot of people nervous when you go this off script. But we'll see how that pans out.